Hello, everyone. Today, I am so excited to finally bring to you a very special Let's Play. One that has been such a long time coming. Possibly more than any other Let's Play I've ever done on this channel. With all the time that I have spent covering Shadow of the Colossus, and to a lesser extent The Last Guardian, it's kind of weird that this trilogy that I have gone on record saying is the greatest of all time, I've never actually covered the third game in the series. Like, not even once. Not even tried to. I've talked about doing it for years, but only now are we finally getting around to it. And you're probably wondering why. Like, do I not like this game? Do I think it's bad or something, or just outdated? And no, not at all. I actually think this is a wonderful game, but I never quite knew how to approach it. And we'll talk about why in a minute, but for now, the main reason I want to cover ICO today is because, well, this isn't just an important game in the context of Shadow of the Colossus and The Last Guardian. This is an important game in the lexicon of the game industry. It is an inspiration to some of the greatest game developers working in the industry to this day. And I think it's important to understand its place in history and why it was so influential and continues to be so influential. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Let's Play ICO. And I wanted to jump right on in because like 5 seconds into the main menu, it immediately shows the eye catch, and I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to spoil anything. So here we go. All right. So I said before that I didn't know how to cover this game versus the other two, and I feel like the reasoning for that is very simple if you know what ICO is all about. Shadow of the Colossus is a very gamey game. Like, despite all of its artistic merit and despite the fact that it's very visually stunning and beautiful and unlike anything else, it is still an action game through and through, which means that every playthrough can be quite different. It's very memorable in that way, but also has a lot of secrets to it and very let's playable in that regard. The Last Guardian is a game that I feel was extremely criminally underappreciated, and a lot of people just really didn't gel with it, but I loved it, absolutely loved it, so I wanted to give that game its due, which is why it got a Let's Play. But ICO is something different, not because, again, I don't think this is a bad game. I love this game, but it's not like really anything else. It's not like covering those games because ICO is so simple. It's so... I mean, honestly, nowadays, there are hundreds, if not thousands of games exactly like it because of how many games it inspired, but in a lot of ways, it is the first of its kind. Now, I'm not about to tell you that ICO did everything that it's doing before any other game, because no, this was actually kind of a marriage between two game genres, the standard 3D platformer and the cinematic platformer, both of which had been around for years at this point. Now, ICO released in September of 2001, so it was an early PS2 game, but not quite a launch title. Although I do believe it had been revealed at the time of the launch of the PlayStation 2. And a lot of people like kind of looked at it and didn't know what to think of it until, of course, it came out. And it immediately became a cult classic without being a massive hit or anything. But that niche that fell in love with it knows why they like it so much. And again, it's because it was kind of the first game to bring the cinematic platformer idea into 3D, because cinematic platformers were sort of their own separate genre. Think games like Heart of Darkness, Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey, Another World, a genre that had been around for a very long time, but was doing platforming with a different goal in mind than most other platformers. But like I said, they had still been relegated to 2D. I mean, even to this day, most of the time they're made in 2D, like think Limbo or Inside or games like that. It just kind of works better in that regard. And I'm not about to tell you that ICO is exactly the same as a cinematic platformer. It's not. But what made cinematic platformers special was that instead of a story that existed in service of the objective, they were kind of the only platforming games where the objectives were in service of the story. And ICO is like probably the first 3D platformer that works in that way, if that makes sense. Like, the mechanics are here, but all of that is kind of unimportant versus the larger picture, everything else that's going on around you. And actually, I would go as far to say this game is more of a puzzle game than it is a platforming game, too, because that's where the real mechanics lie. But there's a bit more to it than that. It also has to do with Fumito Ueda's developing style and how he makes games. I mean, it's something we see in all of his games, but in this one, it's probably the most prominent because of how simple the idea is and how he talks in how he conveys the story. I mean, this dialogue you're getting right now is most of the dialogue in the entire game. In fact, I would say by the end of this episode, you'll have seen 75% of all the dialogue in this game, because it's not interested in talking to you. It's interested in showing things to you, which is kind of ironic given my job here as a commentator. But it's true. That's sort of what makes these games so special. That, and of course, the visuals, which we'll get into in a bit more detail in a moment. But for right now, I'm going to just kind of let you enjoy most of the rest of this cutscene, and then we'll actually jump into the game mechanics, hopefully with a bit more grace than ICO just fell out of his coffin there. And yes, the boy's name is ICO, not some other entity. That is where the title of the game comes from. And now we're awake, and now we're free. All right, I just kind of wanted to let you guys sort of take in everything that was happening in that intro on your own, but we'll dissect it a bit more later on. So for now, let's go over the controls really quickly, just so you understand. So ICO controls a bit oddly. Reminder, this is still very early 3D gaming, and while yes, he can move in all directions, for the most part, he is kind of 8-directional, if that makes sense. Like, yeah, there's a little bit more nuance to it, but for the most part, that's really the only way you need to think of the way ICO is controlled. He's a lot stiffer than someone like, well, for instance, Wander from Shadow of the Colossus. He also only has 2 modes of jumping, straight up and straight down, or a long jump. There is no in between, so you have to get used to that. If you want to try to do like short hops and stuff like that, not going to work. That was me barely pressing the stick forward and tapping it. He still goes flying. It's either straight up and straight down or a very far hop, and you have to get used to that right off the bat. If you press square, nothing. X, nothing. Circle, nothing. Let's try the triggers. Nope. Okay, R2 does a zoom in. L1, how about that? What about R1? We're yelling at something. What is that? I don't know. Maybe we'll find out a little bit later. But for right now, all we can do is jump, yell, and zoom in, I guess. But what about the camera? Okay, so this is where ICO is a little bit different from its contemporaries in a lot of ways. So the camera in this game is not designed like most 3D cameras are. It's not supposed to give you a good view of ICO himself. It's actually meant to give you a good view of the room that you're in. So notice how it kind of swings all the way around. It gives you, like, I wouldn't say quite a 360-degree view of the room, but like 300 degrees, I'd say, about. So maybe that last 60 is all you kind of can't see, but you can swing it around and look at absolutely everything in the room and take stock of the space you're in, because that is what's necessary for solving the puzzles in this game. It's not nearly as much about knowing where ICO is, except for in very specific moments in the game, but in those moments, the camera isn't really an issue, and I'll show you what I mean when we get to that. So I kind of lied. One of the buttons that didn't do anything actually does do something, and that's circle, but only when you're next to switches that can actually be activated, like that. So there we go. We learned another button. Okay, let's continue. Now, as far as this room is concerned, what the heck was going on? We got, like, locked in a cage of some kind, a coffin of some sort, and it just happened to break when the room lowered, which I guess that's very lucky. ICO must have had a very big breakfast this morning, which morbidly probably makes sense, given that's usually what they give to people that are being sentenced to death. And yeah, you can, that's kind of the idea here. ICO was being left to die for whatever reason. But maybe I don't know, maybe we'll find out later, but all we know is that 3 grown men sentenced this child to die, and what the heck is up with that? Now, as far as vaulting up things, just walk up to a ledge and press triangle, and he will mostly grab on just fine. Now we have chains. Okay, so there's two ways that you can interact with a chain when you're climbing it. The first of which is to turn ICO the opposite way where you want to go, press the jump button, and he'll fling himself back. But there is another way to use chains that's going to come in handy a little bit later. So I'm going to turn him around, and what you do when you get on this chain, I don't want to go too low here, is you hold circle, and ICO is going to start to swing like this, and in this instance, he actually will jump forward like that. So we're going to pull ourselves up, go through the window, and into the next room. Lots of fade-outs in this game. Okay, so let's start taking stock of our situation. This room right here, we're going to want to take a look up. It's a very big room, and at the very top, you might actually see something that you probably already recognize. That dream or nightmare that ICO was having actually took place in this very room. So we already got a lead here, but we could go up, but where else can we go? Well, nowhere, actually, because this is the only other way out of the room, and it is currently blocked off. So let's take stock. We got a ladder over here, and then we also have another ladder way over on this side. And this is why you don't want to mess with the camera too much, because you're just going to get disoriented if you do. Just kind of let the camera do its thing. The only time you shouldn't is when you first enter a room and you're not being accosted and you're just wanting to take stock of everything around you. That's the only time you really should be using the right stick in this game. So take the ladder up, and we're just going to want to follow this path all the way up. And as we go up, something that I want to kind of point out is just the visual style of this game. So we've talked about Shadow of the Colossus and The Last Guardian and the kind of features and the architecture in those games, and there's a lot of Mesoamerican inspired architecture to the things going on here, which is what I love about Fumito Ueda's worlds. Just this idea that these places absolutely could exist in real life, but there's just that slight bit of a fantastical element that takes them out of the realm of believability. Like, there was what the heck was going on with the magic sword, and I mean, we saw those pillars that are down there. We saw them being activated by that sword that soldier was holding earlier. And, I'm sure there's probably going to be other things as well, but like think to Shadow of the Colossus with the giants and whatnot, and the Colossi and how they tick. I mean, obviously that's too fantastical to be real, but everything else, just there's something about it that makes a whole lot of sense. Okay, we already see our first inconsistency with the nightmare. Wasn't the figure inside the cage shadowy in the nightmare? That's what I remember. Well, I guess it is just a dream, but also incredibly, eerily similar to whatever the heck is going on here. So let's climb up this window and make our way outside. And this is going to be our first chance to get a glimpse of our surroundings a little bit. So I'm going to actually use the camera here, although very carefully because it is very sensitive. We can start to see the greater parts of the castle, the ocean surrounding this. I think if we actually go over to the other side here, so the other window we can go through is like right up here, but if we go to this side, we can actually pan out even further a little bit. Well, I guess not a whole lot, but yeah, we can really just kind of take stock of just how big this structure is and where the heck we're going. I mean, obviously the goal right now is to get out, but how are we going to do that exactly? Now all we know is that there's this person up here, so let's go and see if we can't free them. All right. So let's head on over here. And there's a switch here, so same as before, we're going to press circle. Oh, that startled her awake. Okay, now that we've talked about chains, it may be tempting to try to make some sort of leap or jump to reach that chain if possible. Just don't do it. It's absolutely not worth it. Just go around the way you came. We're going to make our way all the way back down and see if we can't figure out what's going on once we get down there, because, yeah, it is just not worth trying to make that jump. Now, the thing about ICO is he's a kid, okay? And what are kids if not bouncy? I mean, you've seen those jokes about how, unless you are a kid watching this, of course, y'all have no idea how good you have it. You guys could practically get hit by a car and mostly bounce off of it fine. I mean, obviously I'm exaggerating a little bit, but yeah, kids are made out of rubber. Adults, not so much. We freaking cough weird and our back is thrown out for a week. So the advantage that ICO has is that he can actually fall from really great distances and be mostly fine. Now, he obviously can't jump from the top of this room all the way to the bottom and make it fine, but he can still jump from pretty high up and still be okay. In fact, I'm going to demonstrate it when we get to this ladder down here. I mean, think about it for a second. Just falling the distance of like your own height would hurt your knees pretty bad if if you're around my age, of course. But as a kid, you can like triple or even quadruple that and still just be like, I'm okay, I'm fine. So yeah, ICO's not really any different, as I will demonstrate right here. Yeah, look at that. He just handles it like a trooper. He's good. So falling is not really your greatest threat in this game, but it actually can be at certain times. But this is more in regards to like bottomless pits and things of that nature. So let's take this other ladder up now, because all this does is takes us over and around. Now, the cage, we saw it go down, but where is it exactly? Well, it's right here, but it's off the floor. It's like, I probably would say a good 10 feet off the ground. So we got to get it down somehow. So why don't we head over here and jump to it? Or don't jump to it and completely whiff it. Well, there's a good example of ICO actually being hurt by that a little bit. But still, did you see how high up that was? I guess that was a nice little demonstration of that. Let's try that one more time. Going all the way around. And I'll get a little closer to the edge this time just so I don't whiff that a second time. Get close. And now jump. Again, I'm really starting to think ICO had a big breakfast this morning. Well, we can't dwell on that for too long. We need to pick this thing up, so let's do that. And we're going to do that by pressing circle. But to actually attack with it, we're going to want to use square. So give this thing a couple of whacks. ICO actually has a kind of a 3-hit combo to his attacks. If you can get the 3rd hit off, that will usually knock the monster down. But once you have taken all the monsters out in the area, the portal that they come from will disappear. And now, just press R1. So if you remember correctly, R1 was the call button. Well, also, it is to hold this girl's hand. This right here is Yorda. That's her name. And we actually don't learn that until a little bit later, but I wanted to kind of get that out of the way now because I don't want to just call her girl for the next couple of episodes, because she's going to be very important to our journey. See, this right here, this little sight right here, a boy leading a girl along by holding her hand. That image alone was what inspired the creation of this game and Team ICO as a studio. That was the image that Fumito Ueda wanted to convey in its entirety throughout this game. And that is such a simple goal that it made for such a beautiful and simple game. Now, what do we do with Yorda exactly? How do we get out of here? Well, we can't take her up anywhere. I mean, we could. She can climb ladders. She does so very slowly, but she can climb ladders. We could take her all over the room, but we would just be going back where we started. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to actually walk up to this. Very good question, ICO. Isn't that exactly what that sword did earlier? I do believe it is. But let's head on through and see where this leads us. Okay, interesting. Come on, Yorda. So she can mostly manage like little ledges on her own, but as far as big ledges are concerned, this is where we're going to need to be a bit more gentlemanly-like and hold out our hand for her. There you go. Wonderful. And let's head out outside this door. And get our first glimpse at freedom. Yorda, we have a castle to escape. Listen, I know you want to admire the furniture and whatnot and the upholstery, but really? Okay, well, let's take a look here real fast. Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I guess I could use a rest right now. It is kind of exhausting. Oh, well, there we go. All right. So this is how you're going to save. Every single time you see one of these couches, you just sit on it and you wait for Yorda to come over. If she is taking too long, all you need to do is call her, which is the same button as with what you hold her hand. Once she sits down, then you're eligible to save, and you are treated to what I think is one of the most beautiful pieces in all of ICO. This is a song called Heal. And there's just something so therapeutic, nice, and fluttery, and just wonderful about this little track. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of linger on it for the last minute of this episode so you guys can appreciate it, because this is really going to be the only chance you'll get to for this entire Let's Play. Guys, thank you all so very much for watching this first episode of Let's Play ICO. I hope you all enjoyed it very, very much. In the next episode, all we can do is continue and see where this adventure leads us next. So thank you all so very much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.